I think the thing is quite exciting, and I think people always think I'm very AI optimistic, and I am. That doesn't mean I'm not terrified. I'm also terrified. I managed to be optimistic from a place of really not knowing. But I think there are two things that get me excited. The one is that when you look at the industrial revolutions that we've had in the past, the window for transition has got smaller and smaller. So if you look at electricity, it took a really long time for electricity to land. The industrial revolution took less time. The digital revolution took less time. I think it was about 10 years for the digital revolution. And we expect the AI revolution to be shorter again. So the changes happen much, much quicker with every single shift, which means that discomfort space should be shorter. But I think the other thing that gets me really excited is I speak to my 17-year-old nephew, and his understanding of the potential of AI is so different from when I speak to someone who's 30 years old, because the place coming from is so different. And so to me, I can't imagine why I wouldn't want those people in the organization.
Welcome to People Powered Strategy, the podcast where we sit down with the minds shaping the future of work. Every week, we bring you candid conversations with chief people officers and HR leaders who are driving business outcomes by putting people first. In each episode, we dive into the real-world strategies behind employee retention, talent development, and organizational growth, getting into the nuts and bolts of building HR systems that don't just support the business, but propel it forward.
So I have been Chief People Officer at SUSE for about 3 years now. Crazily enough, my first HR role in HR. Previously in my career, have done predominantly sales role, but there was a stint as an IT manager. I ran large outsourced contact centers for a few years, general manager with about 800 people. So very diverse, lots of pivots. And I think sort of really exciting time to be in HR. So, when I started SUSE in strategy and transformation, when this role was offered to me, it felt like perhaps the most interesting time to come into HR, and initially did it as an interim role. Really didn't, if I'm honest, know what HR was all about, even though I'd been working with them for all of my career. But once I was into it, I realized how at this point in time, with AI really reimagining the world of work, there couldn't be a more perfect time to be in that seat with HR, really thinking about how the company partners with its people to execute on our strategy.
And I would say as well that workplace culture has become more important than ever, or it's a thing that's more like top of mind to everyone than it used to be, perhaps, I think. And that's obviously...
I think that's very true. I think we've sort of been obsessed with the notion of engagement since probably 2019. I think everyone saw Simon Sinek drawing his why. It's probably, certainly for me, my first notion of employee engagement with purpose, employees' investment in purpose and engagement in the workforce. But at the same time, we were obsessed with pizza parties and, the whole Google notion of engagement. And I think the reason that cultures become more important today than ever is that we've evolved that idea from I'm happy to I'm productive, and really giving that shift to productivity, and how culture is ultimately, productivity is about culture, and it's not a one-way thing. It's not about happiness. It's about growth and connection to corporate goals and alignment to peers and their goals. And it's a much more bi-directional thing. So I agree with you in this kind of AI-driven world where jobs are more at risk than they've ever been, and we're trying to create, I'm going to say job security versus role security. How do we get someone truly invested in a company and having them growing with the company? It's more about culture than it's ever been.
Yeah, I also think it's with more companies, I suppose more there being more visibility, perhaps, employees or candidates having more kind of empowerment to talk about the work cultures that they've experienced. I'm just thinking about how a lot of people will go on Glassdoor and look at company reviews before they apply. Now, I think there's much more of it's probably social media, and obviously that's been around for a while, but I think I almost feel like bad work company culture gets noticed more than it used to as well. I think that's an important facet as well, and it is damaging And obviously it was always damaging to things like productivity, but I think it's damaging on so many levels, just in terms of like brand perception as well, perhaps as well, I think is another thing that happens. I wonder if like it's harder to get away with it a little bit, you know? I feel like if people aren't satisfied within your org, I think a bit.
Yeah, I definitely think there's an element of that. I think I agree with you, just damaging all along. And I would say probably much more dangerously damaging internally than externally before. I think the reason it's more damaging today than it's ever been is two things. If we go back to probably like 2023 when attrition was at its highest, and then we saw hiring drop off. So we've been on this journey of like companies were hiring aggressively because we had this big boom of growth. Every company we knew was growing from a headcount perspective and from a revenue perspective, and the world was wonderful. And then people were just leaving at such volumes that we were just hiring probably faster than we needed. And then we stopped hiring. And we've been through a journey probably from about 23 until now where hiring has dropped off, and we've seen more rifts than we've ever seen in the past. So just more companies streamlining and initially just compensating for overhiring, and then recognizing that profitability was important and having to really drop unnecessary headcounts, hit their profitability numbers. And that's just continued, right? Like from 23, first we got rid of people because we'd overhired. Then we got rid of people because actually we recognized that profitability was really important. And now we're into this notion of well, maybe AI is starting to create productivity gains. I don't know that we're there yet. I think this is still companies focusing on productivity. But I think what that's done is there's a recognition that if your culture isn't good, if your engagement isn't good, people are not trying to drive productivity. They're just silently quitting or sitting on the bench taking their salary. And so at a time when every company I know is adding less heads and trying to be more productive and profitable, you need a workforce that's engaged. Your number one lever to productivity and profitability is culture. It's not anything else.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So we're going to talk today a little bit about workforce planning, specifically in the age of AI, and how, we're hearing a lot of narratives, aren't we, that, it's just going to be a gift to us. But I'm really interested in how you think that, how organizations are approaching workforce planning right now, especially in this time of technology and age. And what's the biggest gap you see in terms of what people are doing and what they really should be doing?
I always believe that it starts from understanding who you are as an organization. So for us at SUSE, we're very invested in our existing workforce. And we believe that the skills we need are not out there in the world. There's no scenario where we're going to be able to go and hire everything we need, the skills we need. And that's predominantly because everybody's looking for the same skills and they're extremely expensive and we don't want to overpay. But there's also an element of we have 2,500 people who've invested in our organization and we think they deserve a shot at growing their skills themselves. So I think knowing with the kind of organization that is comfortably just going to churn headcounts and add in new skills and you're prepared to pay at the top of your game, your approach is going to be different, because then you're saying, I want the best of the best and I'm going to go search them out and I'm not going to spend energy and time on my existing workforce. And there are companies that are doing that and that's fine, but know who you are. We're a mid-market payer and we are invested in our own people. So in that, guys, the first premise for us is that we don't believe we can predict the future. So we know today that while we're going to do everything in our power to imagine what the world looks like in 12 months, we're probably going to be wrong. And so our best bet is to be able to identify who in our organization can learn, grow, adapt, and has a continuous improvement mindset. And by the way, that includes getting them working with AI, but it's not the only thing. It's about curiosity beyond AI. So really getting... And the way that we catalog that is with competencies. So we have a set of competencies that really hone in on, can you execute? Can you influence with empathy? And so really understanding our workforce at a competency level that is very generic. It's not about a job-specific requirement. It's about the things that we think you need in every single role in SUSE. And are you analytical? And that's about whether you can write an analytical prompt or whether you can look at data and interpret it. And then taking those competencies, getting people to understand their competencies and understand their ability to move and grow through the organization on the basis of those competencies, and then creating a burning urgency in people to recognize that they have to be prepared to move, that lateral mobility, different jobs, different careers is the way forward. So creating that propensity to move in people feels extremely important for us. Because if you can create that kind of like understanding of your competencies, that propensity to learn and grow, then it means whatever comes, you've got a better chance of being able to pivot. So that's the second step. And then the third part is that we are building out our skills framework. And so what that means is we've got pilots at the moment where we are cataloging skills to really say, what skills do we have in the building, so that we can much more quickly identify that there is a need for a skill and go get that internally in our business, and really get that done on a much more rapid basis. So obviously AI driven rather than humans typing in their skills and trying to figure out what it is they want and need. So we think that those three things will give us the ability to pivot quickly. I think the thing that I see companies doing not enough is transparency about approach. So like, we are far from perfect. There is so much more that we need to do, so much more that we want to do. But we are very clear with our team that this is the way we're going about it, that the onus is on you to own your career and be very curious, learn and grow and adapt and gain new skills constantly. We are very clear with our internal talent team, our recruiting team, to make sure that they are searching internally first, and placing value on organizational context, knowing SUSE as much as that skill that we're getting out in the business, out in the world. And the reason I say that is that what AI is doing is it's very quickly taking away a lot of the demand for complex technical skills. So, if I think about a coder, I'm not saying we don't need engineers anymore, we do, but certainly from an HR perspective, if I'm building an application, I can use someone in HR who's got context of SUSE to build that application. I don't need to go and hire an engineer and teach them about SUSE. So AI is taking away a lot of the complex skills that we would previously have had to go and hire for, but that context about SUSE becomes more important than it's ever been.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I suppose what you mean is, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but kind of, I guess, to prompt intelligently, that understanding of the organization, that experience from having been there is extremely valuable, right? It's like, in terms of what you can provide your LLM or your tool or whatever it is you're using, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because, I think we all understand today that AI is like a incredibly smart grad, but it's absolute business context for our business. And so what we have to overlay on this incredibly smart graduates is give it a coach or mentor who has deep subject matter expertise of our business and what can and can't work in our business. And so it's a bit like you almost want to go, it's like partner mentoring a brand new grad with a very experienced individual from our business, putting them together. It's a very similar thing.
Yeah, I suppose and then over time, I guess the tools that you're using, they get better, right? They learn. So more and more people start providing this experience with them. And then I guess when you get to a point where maybe you do hire someone else who comes in, they're dealing then with tools internally that are already very sufficiently trained on your culture.
We believe in a balance, right? So we still hire externally as well. So we balance new and external. Because you don't get insight of what's going on in the market if you don't bring people in from the outside. I guess you're 100% right. At the moment, I would describe as where we are on our AI journey as in our infancy. So we're running as hard as we can at this problem. We had our entire executive leadership team in a day of AI training earlier this week. So we are running very hard at it, but we're very early and really everyone is. But we will certainly get to a point where we have agents running who understand our culture, who understand our values and ethics, who are able to respond the way a SUSE person would have. And yes, then it'll be very different when other people come in.
Yeah. I suppose, that's a sort of great situation to be in, really. I think that's kind of what we want to get to, do we? We want to kind of do the hard work with AI in its infancy so that, you know, we make life easier for ourselves further down the line, I suppose. I think one of the mistakes that people are making with AI is just taking the lazy option a lot of the time, right? It's very easy to be lazy with AI if you want to be, but
Yeah.
long term, it's not going to pay off, right? It's
Yeah.
only going to pay off. I think my perception of it in terms of like how it can work professionally is that it can literally only pay off in the sense in the short term of like, oh, I've got this document to write. Oh, I'm so busy. Okay, it's done. I've done
Yeah.
it. It might not have been to the best of my ability, but I've ticked a box. That's literally. But I think if companies, whatever department you're in, want to use it intelligently and effectively long term, there has to be quite a lot of work done. I think early on, it's. I think maybe people need to think of it less like a shortcut and something that
Yeah.
you have to build and refine, and then later on down the line it'll be easier, perhaps.
Yeah.
That's kind of my perception on it a bit.
I
Um,
think I think what we're seeing is that there's three different impacts that it has. There is definitely shortcut stuff, the personal productivity, which is the really simple stuff. If this then that type programming of our mailboxes and document changes, all of that stuff. Which, by the way, I still think people are not using enough because it takes some of the drudgery out of our day jobs. I think that the really complex stuff, I agree with you. It requires a lot more intentional thought, and I think certainly the approach that we are taking is that we think you almost need a very specific mindset for those problems. We need to find a group of people in our organization who are going to look at the more complicated stuff that needs to be solved and say, okay, we're going to use AI to solve this problem completely, not a human, and actually we're going to re-engineer the whole thing. So rather than just shortcuts, putting a band-aid on something in the lazy solution, we're actually going to say, no, let's step back, re-engineer the whole thing, and do it AI first. So that I agree with you on that part. That's the second piece. And I think the third part, which comes back to the curiosity, is anybody can write a prompt and produce a document. But how do we teach our people to iterate with AI to get to the best outcome? And I think, when we talk about strategic workforce planning, that is probably the most important skill, right? Like, how do we teach people to co-create with AI, iterate with AI to get to that absolute best outcome?
Yeah, definitely. I think I think it's always the most important thing to think about, isn't it? And I think that is the thing that with AI, I think that as long as we keep that in view of sort of like how does that actually align big picture, then I think then as long as we keep that in view, then I think we're on the right track. Definitely with our wider goals. There is a lot of noise though around AI at the moment, especially in relation to things like workforce planning. People get very uncomfortable, especially in the social space, and they kind of think like, we're going to be in a situation where I suppose, all the potential like junior roles are being done by AI or things like that.
Yeah.
And that people don't actually have a chance to come in and learn and grow. I suppose that's one of the main objections I see at the moment. What is your perspective on that? Like, how would you counter that or challenge that, or are you in agreement? What do you think? How are we going to have to navigate AI? What are our potential hazards that you see realistically, and how can it work for us in the future?
Yeah. So there's a really interesting piece of research that came out recently, and for the life of me, I'm not going to remember what the author was, but I can share it with you if that helps. Where they've now shown that the drop-off on early careers hiring goes back to way before the AI boom and actually really predates into COVID and work from home. So I think the first thing I'd say is that I completely agree with you. If you go out into social media, LinkedIn, whatever, every conversation I have, there is this real panic around early careers and the fact that these people are not coming into the workforce. So that's got nothing to do with AI. What's happened is that as we've dropped off on hiring, the first thing that's dropped off is the early careers, and hiring has dropped off. Every single company, every single industry really has seen a drop off on hiring since about 23. So that's dropped off. the approach that we take on this, and what I think we will see more broadly, is that we're really going through this reckoning in the workforce where companies are trying to find their balance between productivity and profitability. And that goes back to the fact that, and the long story is, companies were overvalued at an enterprise value level. That dropped off. When that dropped off, companies should focus on productivity, which means they slow down hiring. AI will undoubtedly change profitability of companies. That's just the fact of it. Companies are going to become more profitable because they're going to be able, if they use AI correctly, are going to be able to make smarter decisions much more easily and do more of the value-adding things. And I think that'll take us a couple of years to happen. But as it happens, it creates the headroom again to hire, and people will start with early careers. And I'm very confident about that. I see it in every chief people officer I speak to. I see it in SUSE. Everybody has got this flashing red light on their priority list, which is we have to have a balance of generations in our workforce. And I don't see anybody neglecting that reality. Everyone is worried about it. The balance of diversity, whether it be gender or age, is critically important in every single workforce. We're all just trying to find the place where today AI has arrived, but the cost savings have not yet arrived from it. And we're all just trying to get to the place where AI delivers those cost savings so that we can start bringing in talent again, and we will see that young talent come in. And traditionally what would have happened is the jobs that the young talent would have done are things that we're probably giving to AI now. But the truth is, this generation have learned AI at a very young age. They are going to be AI native in a way that many of us just aren't. And so they will be massively value adding in our workforce in a way that others can't. And again, that comes back to diversity of thought. They are going to be so constructive in our environment because they think AI first. We will have to partner them. Before, we would have partnered them with people in our organization to give them business context and all of those things. Now we're going to have to partner them with people in our organization to help remind them not just of business context, but also that AI is not always the answer to everything, and that it doesn't always get it right. So we will have to be able to teach them a bit more savvy analytics of what AI generates. But there's no risk of them being forgotten.
No. Well, I mean, I suppose the thing that I think people forget sometimes is that, there's a lot of people almost come at it from the perspective of like, we're being forgotten about, potential graduates, and companies don't care. And I think what you've highlighted a bit there is that, like, it doesn't make sense for organizations to not care about the future. Like, that can't be it literally can't be true.
Yeah.
Like, anyone with any sense knows that that's just a recipe for disaster if you're not thinking about bringing in younger talent. There's no way you could ever think of it like that. But like I said, I think we're in like a difficult transition period that happens almost with any technological development here.
Yeah.
Where there's a scary time where things are changing, some things are going to be lost, and we're not quite adapted yet. And I think that's where a lot of the fear is coming from, isn't it? But who knows what that adaptation will look like? I mean, are we going to have people who are having extensive, higher education training in AI? Is that what's going to is your your hireability, I guess, in the job market going to be dependent on how effective you are with AI?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what it's going to look like.
I think the thing is quite exciting, and like I think people always think I'm very AI optimistic, and I am. That doesn't mean I'm not terrified. I'm also terrified, but I think I am. I managed to be optimistic from a place of really not knowing. But I think there are two things that get me excited. The one is that when you look at all of the industrial revolutions that we've had in the past, the window for transition has got smaller and smaller. So if you look at electricity, it took a really long time for electricity to land. The industrial revolution took less time. The digital revolution took less time. I think it was about 10 years for the digital revolution. And we expect the AI revolution to be shorter again. So the changes happen much, much quicker with every single shift, which means that discomfort space should be shorter than it was previously. But I think the other thing that gets me really excited is I speak to my 17-year-old nephew, and his understanding of the potential of AI is so different from when I speak to someone who's 30 years old, because the place coming from is so different. And so to me, I can't imagine why I wouldn't want those people in the organization, because they just add so much value in how open-minded they are about it. And I want to be clear, we have people in our organization who are 60 and are obsessed with AI and incredible in executing, right? So it's not black and white, but they are so AI native, that it is just an opportunity that any company would be totally naive to miss out on.
My 67-year-old mother loves it. Absolutely loves it. She's a children's yoga teacher, and she once she realized how effective it was for planning all of helping her plan all of their classes and activities and everything, and make templates and graphics and things, she's just well into it. But yeah, it's crazy. But the potential it has to just change so many different things, and in terms of productivity, is exciting. But it's that transition period, isn't it? It's that uncertainty where obviously there is a lot of fear. And I think a lot of the fear comes from the fact that, as well, partly is we don't know. We know that it can work if people engage with it in the right way.
Yeah.
And all we can do is keep kind of advocating for that. But we don't know if people are really going to do that. That's the thing. I think is it's the kind of it's a tool, and if it's used wrongly, bad things could result out of it. But and all you can really do is just say, look, this is why it's better to use it this way. Let's do that in a way,
Yeah, I think we've seen it at SUSE where we use Google, and we gave the Gemini suite to our entire workforce. And everywhere I go, every function, every age group, every gender, every race, every country, I meet with people, and we talk about what they're doing with AI, and I'm blown away with their innovation and creativity. And I think the fear comes from a place of there's been so much hype about this thing, and there's been so much hype about the negative impact it's going to have on society, that we would be naive to ignore it. But what I overwhelmingly see is that people who are open to it are better off. And the incredible added benefit, which I really never predicted, is that it's made people open to other learning as well. So we've gone from a place where I think as a workforce, we were pretty stuck. And I don't mean SUSE, I mean globally. Globally, the companies I spoke to, people did things the same way over and over again. They thought about problems in the same way. And what I now see is that AI has created the shift to creativity and continuous improvement across the board that goes well beyond AI. So I'll speak to teams, and they found a way to do something better that isn't an AI solution, but because they were thinking about AI, they came up with an entirely different solution. And so it's almost like it's unlocked creativity broadly as well, which, I mean, gosh, what a fantastic unintended consequence.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had that moment definitely with just things in my workday where that you almost get used to struggling with it.
Yeah.
And you just think, oh, this is just a bit of a pain, but I just have to do it every week. And then I'm suddenly hold on. If Claude can do this, then I think it can probably help me with it's making that connection sometimes, and sort of but it's amazing when it happens, when you realize oh, actually, this is not a thing that I have to struggle with anymore. Yeah. I can take that out of my workday, and I can focus on the things I really need to focus on that I don't get the chance to all the time, so that's always a freeing thought. And that's what we keep hearing again and again, don't we, is if you want to go back to the subject of productivity, is that it's gonna, I guess, make employees or leaders as well less reactive.
Yeah.
Less in that sort of mindset where it's just oh, I've just got this whole load of work on me today. Tick that off. Okay, now it's the end of the day. Okay, it's okay, a lot of that stuff I can get AI to assist with. It can do it very quickly. So now I can think about the really strategic aspects of my job. That's the kind of almost holy grail of where we want to get to with AI. Correct me if you think I'm wrong.
No, I completely agree. I think what comes to mind when you say that is that all of that is predicated on psychological safety and trust and transparency. And so so often we're thinking about the skills we need and the opportunity available, and we have a workforce of people, and I don't think this is the case in SUSE, but certainly we've had our pockets and our moments where people are stuck in fear, waiting without answers, unclear on how this thing is going to affect them. And so I think getting people to a place where they can do what you've just described, focus on the strategic stuff, use AI, really depends on our ability to have open and transparent conversations, and create psychological to say, holy moly, this thing scares me, or actually, I really don't know how to do it. Who can help me? Just to create that kind of like real clarity on the onus is on the individual to learn, but we are going to provide all of the support you need to engage with it, because people don't learn from a place of fear in a positive way. That just doesn't.
No, I think it's and you mentioned that you were doing what was it, AI like workshops and training.
Yeah.
I think that's a really important step in demystifying that. I think companies really need to advocate for that. Obviously the onus is still on you, the employee to engage with it. But I think I do think companies do need to, it's in their best interest to facilitate it as well. The kind of training opportunities that they would offer needs to be geared towards dispelling the fear around AI and opening up the possibilities of it as well.
Sure.
So we talked a little bit about the younger sort of generation of talent coming in. What about these people who are just been in roles for a long time and they're scared? They think, oh, is my job going to be there in 5 years? What would you say to those people? I think I know from what we've been talking about, but let's sum it up. What would you say to those people who are just thinking, maybe my job won't be here in a few years? What do I do?
Yeah. So if you don't mind, I'm going to take a little bit of time, and I want to break it into two groups. So I think we've done a program called Future Leaders, which was meant to be 4 months. It ended up being 6 months. And what we did was we went out to all of our over 50s and said, you have spent a chunk of your career looking after your teams, looking after your children, your parents, like worrying about everybody else. And it's probably been a really long time since you've thought about your career aspirations, yourself in any way. And so we want to do something for you. And so we ran this program that focused on wealth, wisdom, well-being, and work. So broader than just AI, but in the work module, we really went in on AI as well, and really took them back to, if I was starting my career today, or if I was taking a moment to think about what I want, how do I unlock my own potential? And for us, it's been really phenomenal, because what it's done is it's created a safe place for a group of people who've worked in a very different world. I mean, we were all, the over 50s were all there before the digital revolution, to really then come to AI from a place of sharing transparency and comfort. And that has been hugely successful. We've seen our Peakon scores across the board go up with that group. Because also, by the way, they're the group least likely to apply for internal transfers to other roles. So, because they're so busy doing everything for everyone else. And so they don't, right? And so that has been phenomenal. And I think that psychological shift will really help them. And they're an incredibly inspirational group, because they really are very open-minded. So we invested in that group, and I think that's important. And we are going to open source that program. We're now busy getting all the documentation and everything together. To the group who are not on that, to the group who are sitting there going, I'm scared, I'm nervous, they haven't had the opportunity to participate in something like Future Selves, I have some really simple tips that I think really work. And I think the first one is saying, I'm just going to start a day. I'm just today going to do a day where I'm going to use AI for everything. And every task I have to do today, I'm going to, whether it's Claude or Gemini or whatever the tool is that you use, I'm going to say, I have to do this thing. Tell me how to do it with AI, how AI can make it better. So rather than trying to myself filter out the things that I think I should or shouldn't do with AI, letting AI help me, and doing it on a day when I have a bit of space to really battle, because it is going to be hard in the first step. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is, I'm a massive believer in communities. So like if I take our people team as an example, every single all hands meeting we have, people come on and show what they're doing. And we really encourage one-to-one partnerships. So getting people to get on a call with someone else in the team to say, I've got this thing I'm trying to do. Can you tell me how to do it? We don't believe in battling. We don't believe in like sitting there pulling your hair out, trying to figure this thing out on your own. We really believe in reaching out to someone else in the team who looks like they've got their way around AI. We call it an AI mentor, and getting them to support solving a problem. Pick one problem, solve one problem, and just do that one thing. So I think the kind of like just really embracing experimentation is the biggest thing. From a philosophical perspective, the only way you safeguard yourself in this journey is by trying it. Like there is no scenario where if I just put my head down and I'm really good at doing my job without AI, that I'm safe. It just doesn't work that way. So you're far better failing 100 times, asking for help and embracing it and embracing learning than sitting on the sides and waiting, hoping that you're going to be safe, because that's not going to help. So yeah, I mean, those are the two things I'd say. Like experiment, like really commit to experimentation, block the time out in your diary, try every single task and let AI tell you how to help. And then like find yourself an AI mentor in your organization, someone who can just, you could say, help me solve this problem. Because once you solve one problem, it rolls, right? You talk about your mother, my mother's the same. Everyone I know, once they start, they really don't stop. And I think the third thing I'd say, which was very helpful for me, is I use it a lot in my personal life. For some reason, doing stuff in your personal life that feels less high pressure, it allows you to unlock the potential of AI in a meaningful way. And there's probably a fourth thing, which I'd say, which is you're never done. The pace of the new models coming out and the new capability coming out is so rapid that you have to sign up to this is now a learning journey forever. So actually, I'm going to block out a day a month, 2 hours a month, whatever it is, and commit to learning a new AI skill, trying a new AI thing in that time block, because it's a lot easier to do that than it is to say, I'm going to learn every day, all day. Most people don't have that capacity. So really committing yourself to saying, I'm setting aside this time every week or every month to try something entirely new with AI, because something that Gemini or Claude can't do well today, it will be able to do well in a month.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Yeah, I think it's I totally agree with you on that. I think the thing that's important to keep in mind all the time is that you've just got to start doing it. You know, I mean, the worst thing you can possibly do is stick your head in the sand about it. I think that is, I mean, I just start using it at all, and then like you said, I think very often that opens up the excitement then and the relief. I think what is definitely true is that if you don't use it, you know, there's going to be trouble. I think, I think that is 100% true. But the other option that I mentioned where we can use it wrongly, I mean, that's within our power to change that.
And I think on the using it wrong thing, I mean, there's the big bucket and small bucket. The big bucket of like the world's going to be cataclysmically fall apart, different conversation. The small bucket of like, I use it wrong. I think the important thing to note there is that as long as you apply some simple rules, which is you don't put confidential information into a public AI, and you think about how you use it, things are not going to go massively wrong. I often get the question from people where they say AI hallucinates, gives me the wrong answer. And I say, but every human I know does that. Like, no offense, but every single human I know, including me, is fallible. And so if we treat AI the way we treat humans, which is we assume that they are not going to be perfect, and I actually think it makes us much better at dealing with humans, because I've now realized, I prompt AI to do something and I do a bad job of the prompt. And it immediately makes me think, oh, wow, if I'd said that to a human, they probably would have got it wrong as well. And I'd have been frustrated at the fact that they got it wrong. So actually it's on me because my prompt was wrong. And the other thing that I repeatedly hear from people over and over again is how AI is making me better. Often people say to me, and I am guilty of this, one-liner emails are not uncommon from me. But now AI can soften me. AI can make me more human. And that's a great emotion, but it's really good at that. And one of our competencies in SUSE is influencing with empathy. And I genuinely think it is the key to most people's success is the ability to influence with empathy. And AI can really help me influence with empathy. And most people. So yes, it's going to get it wrong. I'm going to get it wrong. We're all going to get it wrong, but it can also get it right in a way that we couldn't before.
Yeah, I often type the email first myself and then just click the refine button just to see, like you said, like you soften the edges a little bit, and then it's like, well, the content is still from me, it's just taking some of those edges out. That's a really good example, actually, of how it can, I think, assist people in maybe being a little bit more humane in the way that they talk. And then there's a bit of a feedback loop then, isn't it? Because then you look at that and you go like, oh yeah, I can see where it's coming from there and how that could have been perceived in that way, which is kind of a hilarious situation to imagine, an AI teaching us to be more human, but there you go.
And then there's the counter arguments. I recently said to one of my team members, I hope that you are as committed to the solution as Gemini is, because I could tell that they had read my email, used Gemini to write the response, and it was entirely Gemini and not in character. So this is the journey we're going to go on.
What are your big predictions in terms of how workforce planning is going to change in future years? Let's go even broader, maybe, how the role of the chief people officer is going to change in 5-10 years. Well, what are your predictions?
Yeah. So I am of the opinion that the way we have functions today will not exist. So today, if you think about it, we're sort of really vertically organized, IT, finance, HR. And I think we will get to a point where our processes are horizontal. They are not vertical. And the bulk of the work in the organization will be done on a horizontal plane by process. I think we may possibly will have people like a chief people officer who is thinking about how these horizontal processes impact humans or impact finance if you're a CFO, or impact strategy if the chief strategy officer. But I think we will shift to a place where we've got horizontal processes and humans managing agents running horizontal processes. I still think we'll have humans. In my head that I don't think we get to a world where everybody's lying on a beach and AI is running the world. I think purpose, employment, and I don't mean employment in the context of a job, but employment in the context of having an impact in the world, being employed in something meaningful, is too important to the human psyche for us to do away with humans in the workplace. I don't think that happens. I think we've talked a lot about humans doing the work that humans can do and AI doing the work that AI can do. Well, I think we're past that point, no offense, but I think we're very steadily getting to a point where AI can do most things that humans can do. And I think we start to come back to a place that humans do the work that gives them purpose and AI does everything else. And so I think there are still humans in the workforce. I still think we have someone thinking about those humans in the workforce. And I think that those humans are there because it gives them purpose and joy and meaning. That opens the conversation on what compensation looks like and how the economy works in a very big way. But I think that comes back to a place where we're talking about people not working 5 days a week because no one actually wants to work 5 days a week, or maybe not working 12 months a year. And so it becomes much more of a big gig economy, and how we engage with people, how we contract with them, how we incentivize and I think if we get to that point, then we're a community where people are recognized for their contribution and they have a much stronger connection to how they contribute and have impact. So I think the chief people officer becomes more about strategy and execution and culture than they've ever been. But they still have a role to play, and humans are as important as they've ever been. I know that's very utopian, and if you said to me, what is the timeline on that, I really don't know, but it will be much quicker than we think.
I think as well, one of the things, we're talking very much about companies sort of from an internal perspective here, but in terms of like what customers want as
Yeah.
well, I think externally, I think that human element is, it's going to take a few generations to remove that kind of need for human interaction when you're interacting with an organization as a customer. Even if you know that AI can answer a lot of your questions,
Yeah.
I just think there's a kind of perception of stability and safety through human workers because of that uncertainty there. I mean, I do think we're going to get a lot more accustomed to talking to agents and bots and things like that, and we already do without realizing a lot of the time. And one of
Yeah.
but I think that it's going to take a long time to take away that kind of that connection that people feel when they're interacting with an org in terms of how they interact with the brand when it's an actual person. I think that's one of the strongest arguments I could put forward for people always being employed in a company.
I completely agree, and I think there are so many living examples of that today. When you think about when you go into a restaurant, you pay a premium for a restaurant where someone is going to engage with you because you actually want to have a conversation about the menu and want to talk to somebody. There were lots of examples across the globe where they've put cashiers back into grocery stores because people actually want to deal with a cashier. I can think of examples in every single country I go to where people will pay a premium to go to a doctor who's going to give them more time. And so I think there will always be a premium on a human for service. And I think that will become much more accessible than it's ever been before. So I completely agree with you. I think humans don't go away. They don't become less relevant. I think that becomes the thing that people aspire to have, and we're much more able to do it. Like in my head, there is this world where I don't shop online because shopping online never gives me what I need. I go into a high street store where I talk to a human, and because of AI, they have the ability to do things they weren't able to do in that store in that moment that perfectly fit my body. But I'm still talking to a human who's able to use AI to say to me, this is what works for you and this isn't. So we really come back to that human interaction.
So what do you think then is the how can we affect, in terms of like, go back to culture again, how people interact with each other? Do you think that AI can assist with that as well? Technology can assist with that in terms of just the way that people interact with each other on an interpersonal level within an organization? Because that's an interesting one to me, because I almost feel like that's the one that seems at most at odds.
Yeah.
But what do you think? Do you think there's a ways that we can improve the way that we build literally culture, how people interact through AI?
Yes, I think if I look at SUSE today, our biggest challenge is workload. Like when I look at why people are in conflict, it's because of workload. When I look at when someone's doing a shoddy job that's frustrating someone else, it's because of workload. We have a building full of amazing people. So really getting people to a place where they are using AI to resolve the workload issue, not because we want to give them more work, but because it allows them to go for that coffee with someone, which allows them to build a trust relationship, which means that when they have the next conflict, they have a better relationship. It allows them to spend that extra time getting their job right. So for me, number one, it resolves the workload. Critical, like better decisions come from more time to think, and we cannot underestimate that. I think the second thing is that very often when people don't work well together, it's because they don't have clear, shared and aligned expectations and goals. And I still think that there is work that we can do on how we leverage AI to make sure that everybody has visibility of each other's goals, they understand how they connect, and they have shared expectations on those goals and the roles that they play. If I could somehow have a visual map of everybody in the organization with their goals, with a RACI on those goals, we would operate completely differently. And I think it's a matter of time before we can get there.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the biggest argument for it as well. I think we can get into all, like we were saying before, it's almost about the same argument as being more strategic. I think in a way I think we can free up time for interpersonal reaction with AI, hopefully. And I do honestly believe, I know a lot of time it seems like woolly talk, just like fluffy talk kind of like, oh, it's important for people to be friends at work, you know, and I don't 100% agree with that. But pleasant interactions and a certain amount of humanity is important, you know. We can't turn it to, and I think I think definitely can see how from that perspective technology can help with that. Yeah, definitely.
There is one other thing that has really fascinated me, which is as AI has allowed us to produce transcripts and recordings of calls, it's allowed people to be more connected to what was actually discussed in the conversation rather than getting this third-party commentary, or where we have people who are neurodiverse and they cope better with a transcript, it's much more easy for them to digest that. Now, we got to get to a point where people are not trying to absorb 13,000 transcripts every month, but, you know, how we use that is important. But I definitely think it's evening the playing field on that as well, across time zones, across how brains work.
Yeah, I think I mean, that's been one of the biggest gifts for me from personal level is the notes.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't believe how much easier that's made it for me to organize my work day in terms of interacting with people and things like that. I suppose what I guess the next step from that is maybe having agents that can organize all of the different transcripts and prioritize by level of importance. I don't know how. I think maybe probably people are doing stuff like that already. You know, this. Yeah. I think that's probably where that comes from.
So today we have people in our organization who have an agent running in the background that's collating all of their meeting transcripts, turning it into action lists, managing that action list. They don't have to update it because it's literally listening into every call.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, definitely. That's definitely net positive that I can see. Okay, we're coming to the end of our time, Lisa. But I just wanted to ask you just a fun question that I like to ask everyone at the end of the podcast, which is, what is the one misconception about the people role that kind of drives you crazy a little bit, and you know, every time you hear it, gets under your skin, really irritates you?
Yeah. That HR owns employee engagement, employee satisfaction, goal setting, those pieces. That are fundamentally a leadership question. And over again, I will have leaders call that a HR process. It is not an HR process.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So how does HR interact with that stuff then, from your perspective?
Yeah. So ultimately, our job is to understand the business strategy and how the business wants to execute on that strategy, and then make sure that the organization gets that done and surfaces where it doesn't get done so that it can be managed by the relevant leaders. And there's, you know, ultimately our responsibility is to make sure that every individual gets the right support. And for us, that means knowing whether they're good at their job, which means we care about whether they have goals and feedback and all of those things. And fairness and parity is very important to us. But somewhere along the way, managing fairness and parity tends to slip into telling people to manage their goals or engagement.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's been a bit of one of my ones that I've noticed a lot of people come on and talk about is if they hate being perceived as like almost like the grim reaper of the organization, in terms of like, you know, they're the ones who get called in when there's a difficult conversation that needs to happen, and then that then becomes like they become associated with this negative image. Then, you know, that sometimes like where obviously people like you say, like, we're here to help the organization and everyone, but I think sometimes there's this negative association with the fact that HR have to be involved in difficult things sometimes. You know, I think that's
we're super lucky at SUSE. Our leadership team, from our CEO down, are exceptional. They're really good at doing the hard stuff themselves. And I will say that I have an amazing people team. Like, my people team I'm very blessed. Every conversation I go into, I hear how amazing they are. And so what it does is it means, yes, they have the hard conversations, but they do so much else that we seem to have managed to get away from that perception, which I am so grateful to. And it really is a combination of exceptional leadership from the top and just my team being absolutely world class.
And being strategic, you know, really getting involved in all the different things that they can do, so that then the perception of the role changes, doesn't it? Then, I suppose. That's great to hear. Lisa, thanks so much. It's been a great conversation. Thanks for you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for your time.